know, startup is something which we all are concentrating at this point of time. There are many reasons why we are doing this. Now, in this presentation, definitely I'll give a main emphasis on the prototype, but at the same time, I'll give a touch base of the startup, because as I said, the prototype is somewhere in the middle point of the startup journey. You have something on the left, you have something on the right as well. So prototype is actually the middle point. So I'll give a quick view of the prototype stage, importance of prototypes, types of prototypes, then rules by using which you can make your prototype, validating and testing, validating, then prototype competitions. There are a lot of prototype competitions which happens in India. You all can participate. Prototype conversion. This is going to be really interesting, how a prototype can be converted. And of course, prototype slowly gets converted into stages of startup. That also I will touch. And followed by the challenges. Prototype stage is a very, very challenging step. The challenges which are faced by prototype makers will also be discussed in this. So coming to startup, we all hear the word startup. This is startup, that is startup. A lot of people are saying startup getting this much funding, startup doing this, startup doing that. But what is basically a startup? There are so many definitions. There are different people, different management gurus are giving a lot of definitions of startup. But startup, in the simplest possible word or simplest possible term, is actually the company which is absolutely in the initial phase of the operation, or probably is in the ideation stage. Ideation stage is the first stage of startup, because idea is the seed from which the entire tree develops, right? So startup is a company or probably a business concept which is there in the first stage of operation, right? Now, this startup, we are hearing a lot of startup related activities. Even the government across India, across world, all of us are promoting startups, startup environments. Now, why? The reason are many, but two basic reasons for encouragement of startup is, number one, you have to understand we are a country of 1.3 billion. Remember, 1.3 billion. This is not a small number. So giving employment to 1.3 million is an impossible task for any government in the world. Not only India government, not only state government, but any government in the world. 1.3 billion is a big number. You know, it is said that a concept which can be implemented in India can be implemented in every part of the world. That's because our base of population is so huge that, you know, the implementation of a single idea can take years or probably decades. We know that the polio eradication has taken so many years. However, in the countries like France, like Italy, like Germany, it happened like this. But in India, it has taken completely almost a decade. So 1.3 billion population, giving an employment to all of them is an impossible job. So even if you start setting up so many factories, so many companies, so still it looks impossible. So government has changed the strategy. So what they have changed the strategy, instead of increasing job, let's increase the job creators. I repeat, instead of increasing job, let's increase the job creator. So if you set up one factory, say, it can maximum give employment to how many people? 100, 200, that's it. But if you generate 100 job creator, you know how many employment it can generate? Probably 10,000 or even more. So that is the importance. This micro level entrepreneurship need to be developed, and soon this micro level will get into macro level, and this has got a huge capacity for giving employment, for improving the life and society. And third is solving the problem faced by the society. Remember, what is business? What is business? Business can be defined in many big terms, but easiest way to describe a business is solving an existing problem with a designated supply. It's just a game of demand and supply. There is a demand and it can be fulfilled with a supply. Now, startups The micro level startup has got amazing capacity for that, especially the rural India. Rural India is a powerhouse of economy. It needs to be harnessed well. Now, this is what I talked about startup. Now, what is startup? Is this just a phase of 10 months, 6 months, 1 year, 2 year? Answer is no. Startup is a journey. Startup is a journey. I have described startup in 12 points, 12 stages of startup. In fact, I have made a podcast on that as well. I'll share the link with Sir, and probably you all can hear that. Now, startup journey starts with idea stage. You know, the idea is the seed from which the tree develop. So idea stage is the stage which comes in the flash of the founder, right? Remember, this idea doesn't come all of a sudden. The idea comes like a flash of light. It comes as a flash and it vanishes. You have to grab that flash. If you fail to grab that flash, your idea of entrepreneurship is lost. So first thing first, idea stage has to be very well organized, right? So this is something which is important for anything. That now idea can be, you know, detecting a demand and planning a supply. It can be solving a problem, or it can be even enhancing a procedure. I repeat, first is getting a demand and solving it with a supply. Number is a persistent problem solved by a solution. And number three, and an existing system and its improvement. These three are the basic ways how the idea of entrepreneurship can be developed. But remember, idea always comes to mind as a very crude form. Very, very crude form. You know, 99.99% of the idea doesn't even look like a business idea. So this idea need to be nurtured. This idea need to be worked upon and has to be turned and transformed into a business idea. Next come, okay, you have turned a business idea. You have identified the process, what to be done, what not to be done. But how to do this? In order to do this, you have to go for the planning stage. You have to plan. You know what is planning? Planning is defined as the blueprint of future action. So it has to be planned well, stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. And remember, planning has to be in pen and paper. There is nothing called mental planning. You can do a mental brainstorming, but there is nothing called mental planning. It has to be in pen and paper. So once you make the plan, you create an idea. So you nurtured the idea and worked upon the idea and made it a business idea, following which you have made it a planning. You have gone into the planning stage. And you have started making planning. Okay, stage number 1 is this, stage number 2 is this, stage number 3 is this, 4, and so on. Like, third is an important step. Most of the entrepreneurs or startup founder miss this. They start away, go and start making the prototype, start raising funds. And of course, you know, it doesn't become in a structured way. In order to become, or in order to make your startup a structured startup, you have to form a company. It might sound bit difficult. It might sound weird, but you have to form a company. You have to create your face. If you don't have a face, no one will interact with you. Even if you go to startup pitching, if you go to prototype presentation, if you don't have a face, no one will interact. They will say yes, and that's the end of the story. They will say it's nice, that's end of the story. They will say very good, that's end of the story. So you need to have a face. Face comes in form of company formation. You have to create a company. Now, company formation may seem like a very tough, very complicated job. But in India, there are two ways by which you can make a company. Number one is unregistered company, like proprietorship or traditional partnership company. Now, using these two, you can easily make a company, but these are unregistered companies. But it's good to start at the initial stage, as it has got very little or probably no initial funding as well. However, if you have funds, if you have got structured guidelines, if you have got mentorship and support, you can very well go for a private limited company or any sort of a registered company. Now it starts with OPC company, that is one person company. This is a new concept which started a few years back. There is also the traditional partnership company, which can be converted into LLP, that is limited liabilities partnership, or you can even go for private limited company, public limited company, but these are all very big brothers. So not going that deep, but first thing first, what you have to do, you have to form a company. Without your face, no one is going to interact with you. Even if they say your product is nice, but taking your company or taking your idea to a next level will only happen when you have a face. Second is IP rights. Now, IP rights is intellectual property rights. Intellectual property, whatever you have made, it has to be registered under your name. It's not that a person next door can come and say, okay, this is what you have made, but this is actually my product because see, I have registered it. You know, India has lost a lot of inventions to the foreign people because our intellectual property registration system was very, very complicated, but recently it has got simplified. You know, the wireless was first made by a person from India. His name is J.C. Bose, Jagdish Chandra Bose, but he didn't register it. Instead, Marconi registered it. So in spite of J.C. Bose, Dr. J.C. Bose made wireless, made first tested wireless, created a prototype of wireless, but we don't give a credit to him. We give credit to Marconi. Like that, there are so many, you know, the test tube baby was also first made in India. Of course, a doctor from Kolkata has made it, but someone else staying abroad registered it first. So he got the IP right for this, intellectual property right for this, patent for this, and he became the inventor for this, right? So like this, even you can see something called a film was made called Ek Doctor Ki Maut, featured by Pankaj Kapoor. Right, Pankaj Kapoor, that's a real story of doctor in Kolkata who failed to protect his IP right. But you know, IP right is a very complicated process and it's a bit expensive process as well. So you need a proper mentorship and hand-holding before you actually go for the stage number 3. Next comes the prototype stage. Now, this prototype stage we are going to discuss in elaborated way in this presentation. Now, prototype in a very layman's language is the first show of your product or service module to the external stakeholders or external people. You collect a lot of feedback, you improve it and move on to the next level of startup. Fifth is fundraising. Fundraising is you take fund to make certain products, probably from banks, from NBFCs, or probably from angels, VCs. There are so many things. We will discuss all these steps in a later stage of the presentation. After fundraising, you have to immediately go for production phase. Loss of time here is the loss of money. So, but before going to production phase, you have to test your production so that in case there is any error, it can be rectified before you go into the mass production. So next is going to the mass production. The mass production level is quite important and a lot of quality control checks, efficiency check, these all you have to do. 8 is post-production stage. Post-production stage is checking the distribution chain, taking care of the storage, etc., etc. Number 9 is sales and marketing. Now you have made a fantastic product, amazing product, but it doesn't sell in the market. Is there any worth of making that product? Answer is no. A business becomes a business only and only when there is a monetary transaction. People pay for that and buy it. So Apple becomes a good product. Next comes sales and marketing. What I was telling, you have to market your product well. You have to sell your product. Unless your product sells in the market and you get the money and profit out of that product, then the cycle of business, till that time, cycle of business doesn't get completed. Cycle of business or cycle of starter has to complete, and sales and marketing is a major factor in this. Next comes break even. We all know what is break even, when the revenue exceeds the cost. That's how you start earning profit, and profitability or the profit earning is a very satisfying phase for an entrepreneur. After grinding so much, so many stages, this is the process, this is the stage where he starts earning. And 12 is growth and diversification. Now, growth and diversification phase is that when you have earned profit, you have got a reserve profit, you have paid away all your loan, you start increasing your production, or you want to add a different vertical to your business. That's how you go. But remember, this stage number 12, that is growth and diversification stage, is equivalent to the first stage. The cycle of startup keeps revolving and revolving. So that's what are the stages of startup. So you will find the prototype is somewhere in the middle point of the startup phase. The key area, or the key motive or mission for startup is to go ahead with the balance stage. And once you start climbing these steps, your startup journey will slowly but steadily start taking the shape, and it will start becoming a proper startup. It will slowly start getting converted into a startup. Now, what is prototype? As I have said, there could be so many definitions of prototype, but prototype in a layman's language, in the most easy language, is the preliminary version of your product or show of service module. Now you have made an idea stage. Now you have planned your product and startup launch, followed by your company formation, and next is your prototype. You have to show the whole world, to the external stakeholders, what are you making, what are your plans. So this is something which you have show it to the external world. But I'll tell you something, prototype stage is a very, very tough phase. Why? Because first and foremost, you don't have much resources, you don't have funding, you don't have manpower, you are doing it all alone. But in spite of so much challenges, you still have to put your best foot forward, because this is how your business idea gets evaluated by external people, external stakeholders, external factors. But remember, prototype can fail. I repeat, prototype can fail. You have heard about Henry Ford. We all know who is Henry Ford. Henry Ford was the founder of Ford, right? His prototype failed numerous times, right? And after rectifications after rectification, exercise after exercise, famous experiment with tungsten filament lamp. He has failed so many times while making prototype. So he kept on doing unless he made the bulb. So like that, your prototype stage is a very crucial stage, and it is a very, very, very tough phase. So you have to have your nerves of steel if you are in this prototype phase. So you should not get disheartened if one prototype doesn't work. It's fine. Rectify and make the second prototype, make the third prototype, and keep going on. This is the phase where your design or your product or your service module, whichever you thought in your brain, comes in reality. So this is the phase which connects between paper to reality. This is the connecting phase. I repeat, this is the phase which connects between your thoughts, your ideas, and reality. Remember, this is the stage of prototype. Prototype at times it also acts as, it seemed like a very, very technical subject. It looks like, you are inventing some very sophisticated engineering tool, but no, prototype is now a generic term, business prototype, and it is more applicable in business world as compared to the technical world. So this is the stage which makes your business idea from paper tiger to real tiger. Okay, this paper tiger to real tiger. This is the phase which you have, which will contribute to this. Now, prototype stimulates real and future products. Now, I'll tell you something. Prototype is the first replica of the product which you are making up for your customers, right? You might think of solving a problem, probably a sanitary problem, which is very common in rural India. So in order to make that problem, make that solution in the mass stage, you have to first make a model of it, a prototype of it. But remember, model and prototype are two different words, should not be mingled together. But you have to make a first living functional model of that particular which can solve the sanitation problem of So that's what it's. So this is the early sampling. You can consider it as a sampling method. You can consider it as a process method, whatever. But you have to present the whole idea in reality in front of the external world. So that's what is prototype. Now prototype can be in form of semantics, can be in form of design, electronic, or even in form of computer programming. Even if the physical product can also be demonstrated in form of digital prototype. So this is something or this is a decision which has to be taken by the startup founder, how he want to present the prototype. There are many founders who are very well versed with software programming, and they produce a digital prototype of the solution or the business model. But there are certain entrepreneurs, certain startup founders who want to present a smaller version of the real product. So this call has to be taken by the entrepreneur, by the startup founder, how he want to project or present his prototype. Prototype is not a dummy model. There is a difference between model and prototype, right? Prototype is a real and a functional model. However, the traditional model may be just a dummy model. This is how it looks like. From here, the raw materials enters. From here, the finished products come out. But it doesn't give you an idea of the real product or real functionary. It's just a model. But prototype is much different than model. It is a functional model. Now, prototype is a very early stage. It's a early stage where the concept of business is brought in front of the external world. It is quite expected that there could be mistakes, there could be a lot of scopes of improvement, there could be a lot of other things. But remember, it is equally important to present the prototype in a proper way, because it's an early model. Remember, with this prototype, your business proposition, your business concept is going to be assessed, going to be tested. So this is what the best way to think about prototype is the representation of finished product. So the last point is quite important. This may not be the finished product, but this can be the representation of the physical product. Finished product can be much bigger. Finished product could be completely different in specifications. But what is prototype? It is the first-hand replica. It is the first-hand replica. Now, whatever hypothesis you are thinking at the back of your mind in order to make that product or a service module for the business, that has to be backed by the idea of prototype or the functional prototype. Whatever you are thinking, it has to come in your prototype. If something which you are thinking and not coming to your prototype or not getting implemented to your prototype, there is somewhere a gap. Either there is a gap in implementation or your ideas need to be reworked once again. So that's what is the prototype. Now, a quite important, it's a valid question I keep on getting in many webinars, many sessions, that what is the importance of prototype? Why do we make prototype? We can make the final product and give it to the investor for getting funds, or we can directly send it to the market for selling. What is the need of more prototype? Why do we have to spend so much energy, so much time to create a prototype? The answer is really interesting. So first thing first is that you have to evaluate your new design. Evaluation of the design is very important. If you are making your design for the first time, there are high chances that design might have a lot of errors, lot of teething errors, lot of teething problems. So prototype is the right time when you can rectify those errors. You can analyze those errors. You can do a lot of experimenting. So this is the right time before you get into the mass production. For example, take a hypothetical situation. You didn't make a prototype and you have made a mass production, probably 10,000 of your business product, and that product has got a minor defect. Now what? All 10,000 products which you have made has got the same defect, right? So prototype is a place where the new design is done and the precision is analyzed, the precision or error freeness is analyzed. So that's why we bring this prototype phase into existence. Now, this works as a real and working system rather than theoretical system. This is, whenever an idea comes in mind, that comes in form of theory. That doesn't come in form of real. So, it comes as a flash of light. We work on them and we make a theoretical plan for that product. But when we make prototype, we make the theory into reality. We make the paper tiger into a real tiger. So that's where the prototype comes in. You can refine, you can validate your designs, and you can even do a lot of tidbits in prototype. You can do a lot of rectification. You can change the model altogether as well. But you cannot do that with your finished product, right? So it will, and second thing is that when you present your prototype in front of the external world, what happens? There are a lot of minds which keep analyzing. There are many things which might not come to your mind. But when the lot of ideas start pouring on your prototype, business prototype or service module, whatever you take it as, there are a lot of constructive suggestions you will get, a lot of constructive criticism you may get. So these all things you need to absorb in you. Your mind has to absorb them. You have to write all those, and you have to keep rectifying those prototype. Prototype is not a one-time game. Remember, it's not a one-time game. You have to keep making your prototype 1, prototype 2, prototype 3, and so on. Even if you ship your product, if you start manufacture, still you have to keep nurturing the prototype in form of R&D, research and development. In the world, China is the place where the maximum number of prototypes are getting nurtured. Every company in China has got a prototype prototype validation center, what they call as R&D center, where the prototypes are modified. The customers start giving their feedbacks. The companies start giving their feedback, and based on they can keep modifying their prototypes in form of R&D. So prototype is not a one-time job. Prototype is definitely the toughest job at the start, but once the cycle of the startup keeps on going, the prototype, the nurturing prototype becomes quite easy. So, and the last point is design's correctness. This is, I keep on saying, there could be a lot of error when you make the product for the first time, but this is the right time where you can rectify the errors in your product. So that is the importance of prototype. Now, next point is usage of prototype. Now, prototype is first and foremost, it is evaluation process is there. Whenever you present your prototype, your technical design is first of all evaluated. Your business model or service model is getting evaluated. Okay, for example, you present a prototype, probably this particular system or this particular plan in your community or in your village can stop waterlogging, right? So first, you can draw a diagram very well. You can make all of the plans in your brain, but unless you test water, it's of no use. The prototype first is the technical evaluation of your design or your service module. So this is number one, why the prototype is done. Second is very important point. It is, in a startup or a business journey, the money really plays an important role. So checking cost and efficiency is the second step for prototype. Whether this prototype is financially feasible, yes or no. We need to decide this in this prototype phase. At times you can make an excellent module of business, but that is very, very expensive. Probably the people won't buy it. Right. So there is no point. Probably you have to go back to your war room. You have to rethink. You have to brainstorm once again, and you have to come with a cost-effective module. Second is efficiency. Now, efficiency. We all know what is efficiency. Efficiency is amount of work done per capita time. Right. Higher the efficiency, lower is the cost. I repeat, higher is the efficiency, lower is the cost. Higher is the efficiency, higher is the productivity. Right. So if the prototype design has got high efficiency, that is very good. that can do a lot of work in a lesser unit of time. But on contrary, if the efficiency is low, you have to put too many injunctions there to get a small output. So check of cost and efficiency is important. Third is work capacity. How much capacity of work it can do. How much work it can do. Probably somehow related to efficiency, but work capacity is completely a different topic in business or in business management. Third point I have already mentioned, this evaluating functionality and detecting errors. Detecting error and rectification is easy in prototype as compared to the finished product, right? Third is the main reason, the fourth is the main reason why people go for prototype, to draw investor. If you are making a product, you require factories, you require machines, you require manpower, you require a setup, you require electricity, you require licenses, you require permissions, and all this want fund or money. Unless you are absolutely sure you can fund it yourself, you can do a bootstrapping, you have to go for a fundraising exercise. You need to go for a fundraising exercise with different financial institutions, different NBFCs, probably angel investors, venture capitals, etc. Now, this fundraising exercise is the key motive, is one of the key motive of prototype. We show the prototype and we get the fund. You won't believe, there is a startup in Kolkata who works with goat, breeding of goats. And the keeping a cow for a poor man in India is quite expensive as compared to keeping a goat. And goat too can give milk, goat too can give dung. Instead of cow dung, we can use the goat dung as manures. And it can also be used for different, and once the goat becomes old, we can very well send them to the slaughterhouse for meat extraction purpose. And believe me, with this prototype, he has raised a huge funding. So he has presented his prototype of business in front of investor and gained fund. And now he is taking this to a global level. Even the United Nations has also come forward to take this, take his concept to different African countries. So that's one of the key motive. And last, patent and IP rights. I have already said the importance of patent and IP rights. It might sound as complicated, it might sound as expensive, but at some point or other, you need a hand-holding for patent. Unless and until your business model, your business name, your invention, your writings are not registered under intellectual property rights in form of trademark, in form of patent, in form of business secrets, in form of trade secrets, in form of copyright, you are no one. Tomorrow, your colleague can come and say, okay, it's you who have made, it's I who have made this because I have got a patent of this. And at the same point, you don't have any option. Remember, in this situation, the person making the first move, wins. If you have not made the first move, you are bound to lose this. But remember, this is a complicated phase and you require a mentorship for this. Now, next line, it says the purpose of testing a prototype is to make sure time and money go into creating right products. I've already explained this. The first design of the product can be full of errors, can have one error, multiple error, and recurring errors. So these all has to be corrected in the prototype phase. In case it is not corrected and with that same error it goes to mass production, you are bound to lose because defective products will not be accepted in the market. Customers won't buy it and distributors will return it to your factory. So that is the thing. So your error freeness has to be there. So this is the right step where you have to rectify your errors and make sure your time and money, these are two very important resources in business, doesn't go in a wrong way. Now, this is because making a change in prototype is very fast and easy because prototype is a small model. It's a replica. It's not a model of 10,000 items or 1 lakh items. It's probably one item. So making any change is fast. Making any change is easy and it is less expensive and requires less time. So this is why we always insist to you first create a prototype of your startup idea and then you make your empire. Don't start getting into the empire right away. You start, make a prototype, you present it to the external one, get feedback, and then you go ahead with the rest of the stuff. We can very well omit this, but still the cycle of the startup will go on. Even if you omit the stage of prototype, startup cycle is not going to stop. It will keep on going and going. And probably it can get into a loss-making cycle because of the products are not checked at the right time, at the right way. So prototype is brought into the startup only because of this reason. Now here you also have to idea that what is the behavior of the person who is evaluating. Generally, the people who evaluate are the veterans of the industry, or the people who evaluate are the investors. They know how to quickly assess a product, the profitability of the product, or the technical aspect of the product. They are most of the time they are the panel which forms, they are very experienced panel. They are very knowledgeable panel. So that's the importance of prototype. Now, very quickly, I'll check the types of prototype. Now, there could be a lot of prototype types which we can read in books. I have just mentioned 5 of them. Apart from 5, there could be high feasibility prototype. There could be low feasibility prototype. There are so many types of prototype. But grassroots level business, it's not so important to get that deep into the technical aspect of this topic. So what is important is this: you have to check concept, feasibility, horizontal, vertical, and functional things in your prototype. Now, there are not different sessions for analyzing these types of prototype. Probably in one session, all these 5 steps will be analyzed. Probably in one moment, all these 5 steps will be analyzed. First and foremost, as I said, is the concept prototype. The business concept is analyzed. Most of the time, there is something called Cobra effect. Do you know what is Cobra effect? I'll tell you, I'll give you a very interesting story of that. In colonial time in Delhi, when British used to rule our country, there was a stage in Delhi, or there was a time in Delhi where there were a lot of cobras, there were a lot of snake bite cases used to come, and a lot of people used to die. So the government, the Delhi government, the British government at that point of time has said that, okay, has announced that anyone who can bring a dead cobra will be given a cash benefit. So what has happened? That was supposed to sort out this cobra effect. Instead of launching a cobra, cobra catching or cobra killing campaign, they have outsourced it to the people. Okay, you bring a cobra, we'll gift you. You know what has happened? People started breeding cobra. So, the solution started giving more problems than the real problem, right? So people didn't think of this. People didn't think of this problem. So the concept prototype is the checking of the concept. You may think your concept is a fantastic concept. That may not be a fantastic concept. You have to get your concept of startup checked, right? There are certain concepts which are not at all, no way it's a business concept. There are many people who come with a concept. I have personally seen that. There are many people who come with an idea, business idea, which are not feasible under any circumstances, but they think they can do that. Then those people need to be counseled and need to be educated why his business idea might not work. So his concept of business need to be checked, need to be nurtured, need to be worked upon. So first thing first is the concept prototype, where the concept of business is checked and analyzed. Next is feasibility. Now, as the name suggests, it checks the feasibility of product, whether this product is feasible to make, whether this service module is feasible to conduct. Next is this feasibility prototype. As the name suggests, it checks the feasibility of the business, whether this business is feasible. For example, I'll give you an idea. If you want to start a business, a liquor business, an alcohol-based business in Gujarat, you cannot do that because Gujarat is a dye state. That's not feasible there, right? Third is horizontal prototype. Now, this is more of a technical term. This check the scope and requirement of the product. Now, what is the scope? You make a product, but Does the society or does the market really need that product? That is really checked over there. You make a fantastic product. You make a pen. Say this is a pen. You make a pen. It's a $1,000 pen. Remember, $1,000. This pen worth $75,000. Is it feasible? Can market accept it? Maybe yes, maybe no. The high chances market will not accept it. If I make 1 lakh pieces in a week, when I will sell this, I'll not be able to sell this. So this horizontal prototype check the scope and requirement of the product, whether this particular product of 1,000 of worth 1,000 US dollars is feasible. I'm not, no, it's required in the market, whether market can accept it, there is a demand in the market, or simply it cannot go in the market. So this feasibility check is done in the horizontal prototype check. Next is vertical prototype. Now horizontal was this way, the vertical was this way. Now vertical, it says the component of product and execution probability of service. Now business is always of two. One is the product business and second is the service business. First is the key component of the products are checked. Now this key component, whether this product can be executed well, whether this service model can be executed well. So this is something which is checked in the vertical prototype. In horizontal prototype, the requirement was checked, and here the key components and the execution phase of the proposed business product or service is checked. Now functional prototype. Now functional prototype is the sequence of usage. It tests the steps and processes. Step 1, step 2, step 3. How a prototype becomes a business, and business gets into the market, and market earns profit. This whole circle is checked in the functional prototype. So these are the different types of prototypes which are checked during the presentation. These are the types of prototype which an investor looks for. These are the type. Always remember, you need not to go for a presentation for each prototype level. Probably in one presentation, all these things will be checked. Probably in just one session, an experienced examiner or experienced investor or experienced industry professional can check all this content within 1 minute, probably, or even less than that, because they are experienced people. They keep doing this and they are veterans in the industry. So all these things need to be checked during the presentation. Well, I must say there is no written rule for prototype or making a prototype. There is no written rule, because rules which I make can be completely different from one industry to other industry. Probably if you are making a pulse oximeter, which is in high demand now, the rules could be different. Now, if you are making a sanitizer, hand sanitizer, probably the rules can be different. So there is nothing rule. These are the general standards which I have mentioned. Don't take it as a hard and fast rule or it's a theory, but take it as just a general standard. Okay. Number 1 is set a standard. Whatever you make, you have to set a standard. You cannot present a substandard product. I repeat, even if you do not have right manpower, you do not have right resources, you do not have full money, still you cannot compromise on the standard. This is take it as bold and capital. You cannot do this. If you're lacking in standard, your prototype is gone. There is no further movement of your prototype phase. You have to set a standard. Number 2 is clear goal for making. Now, why are you making a prototype? There could be a different reason, probably fund, probably getting patent, probably checking the errors of the design. So the goal for making prototype has to be absolutely clear. It has to be clear in the mind. Why are you making prototype? Why? This why has to be absolutely clear in your mind. Number 3 is chance for experimenting. There is always a chance for experimenting. Once we start getting the feedbacks, we can have a lot of chance for experimenting. So never get shy with the experiment. Some experiments might fail, some experiment might succeed, some experiment has to be done once again because of some reason or other. So chance for experimentation is definitely there. Brush up your prototype processes, how you are making the process, what exactly I have mentioned in this point. The functional prototype, vertical and functional prototype, this thing has to be there, has to be absolutely clear. You have to keep brushing this process. You should not miss a process. So that is the thing. Brushing up the prototype process is important. Next is budget. Budget is always important. In business, nothing moves without money. So how much budget you are having, how much budget you can take, and how much budget you can allocate for step 1, step 2, and step 3, so on. This budget planning has to be very, very done carefully and with utmost care. You cannot go wrong with budget in business. This is the first step. Even the business hasn't started, it is still there in form of prototype. Still, you have to be very, very particular about budget handling. Remember, budget or money matters in business. Embrace the failure. I have already said, never get disheartened with any failure. Henry Ford has failed so many times. Thomas Edison has failed so many times. So they all failed in the prototype phase, right? So don't get disheartened with failures. Failures are bound to happen. Always remember, the average prototype success rate is just 20%. 80% is the failure rate. In other words, in order to succeed 20 times, you have to try 100 times, and you are bound to fail in the 80 times. Remember, when we do our business, we launch a lot of products, product 1, product 2, product 3, product 4. All products doesn't do well in the market, right? Only probably 5% of the product do well in the market, right? Now, if I only produce 5%, not even one product will stand in the market. So you have to produce 100 products in order to make 5 products successful. So that's there. So not to get worried about the failure. These are the general things. Failure will keep on going. Just keep doing. Just take care of your budget. Navigation element for the feature you don't yet have. Now, it is quite obvious you might not have, even after putting the best foot forward, you might not have all the features which you have planned. Quite obvious, quite obvious. So don't give a full stop to that. Keep a provision for inclusion of those features in future. I repeat, even if you do not have all the features which you have proposed, please make a provision. In future, you can add them, right? So that's the thing, navigation element for a feature you don't have yet. It is a very common thing. Not to get this kind of, you wanted to add 10 things in your prototype. You only managed to get 7. 3 things are not there. So keep a provision for adding those features. So that's there. Use the right tool. If you are making a service module prototype, that's good. You don't require much of the tool. But if you are making a product prototype or a system prototype, you have to use some of the good tools. Most of these good tools do not come at a very expensive price. Most of the time it is free. Only thing you have to know how to pick and from where to pick those tools, right? You have to use your best tool. In spite of having shortages, in spite of having things, you still have to use the best and the right tool. If you do not use the right tool, your product will be substandard product. The first point I have mentioned in the rule of prototype is set a standard. So if you're not using the right tool, your standards are not going to be right. Now, should be cross-functional. Now, this is a new age concept. All your business concepts should not be solving one problem. It should be cross-functional. It should solve the key problem, but it should also extend a helping hand to surrounding problems near to that, right? So let me give you the example which I just quoted of that goat. I mean the startup which dealing with goat. Their key motive was to lessen the expenditure of the rural India and the people who cannot afford a cow, because keeping a goat is less expensive as compared to keeping a goat is less expensive as compared to keeping a cow. That was his main function, right? And what are the allied function? Allied function was the goat dung used for manure. When the goat becomes old, it's sent to the meat production factory. So these are cross-functional things. Its key area is getting pinpointed, it's getting solved, as well as there are surrounding problems which are also getting solved, right? So it should be cross-functional. It should have a cross-functional utility. Next is design with user in mind. The customers are king. So you can make an excellent air condition. You can make an excellent excellent tungsten lamp or an LED lamp, or you can make an excellent but if I don't buy it, how does it matter? Does that really make a business? No, it is not going to make a business. Absolutely not going to make a business. Right. So whatever design you are making, you have to make with customers in mind. Right. If customers are happy, if the customers are accepting it, if the market is accepting your product, you are the king. Over and out. Nothing. If the market rejects your product, you are no one. Remember, you are no one. Even if you make the finest of the product, even if you make the wonderful products, but still you are no one, absolutely no one. Your business is a failure. Now, let's go to presentation and testing. Now you have made, till now we learned about what is prototype, importance of prototype, why we make prototype, rules of making prototype, types of prototype. Now you have done everything, but at the end of the day, you have to present it, right? Your prototype has to taste water. Yes? Well, first thing first, your goal should be clear. I have already said why you are making a prototype, why. That goal has to be there. Why you are making a business, whom are you targeting? These things has to be absolutely clear. Your goal for testing a prototype is absolutely clear. Whom are you presenting? Why are you presenting? What are the problem this prototype is going to solve? Why? It's worth defining a goal for testing. So your goal is your guiding lamp. If you do not have a goal, if your guiding lamp is not lit, how will you get the direction? You cannot get a direction. Absolutely. Second is test early and test often. I have already said that it's not a one-time job. You have to keep testing your prototype again and again. You have to start testing this prototype at a very early stage. Okay, early stage. I do not mean a unfinished stage. Of course, you finish your prototype and then you go for a presentation of your prototype. You don't think that, okay, when I will make a big product, then I will present. Well, I'll integrate all the features, then I will spend. That's not going to help. That is not going to help. It will take years after years. So once you have a proper functional, a proper well thought design, go ahead and do it. Go ahead and start presenting it. Sorry. The testing doesn't stop. As I said, testing doesn't stop when your product ships. Even if your product is shipped, your product is definitely marketed. People are buying it. Still, your testing should not stop. It has to go on in form of R&D, research and development, right? Whenever you have an idea, you have to get a user experience. As I said, the customers are the king. If the customer like your product, you are done. You can create an empire. You can create a kingdom. But if the customers do not like it, customers do not buy it, you are good for nothing. I'm sorry, you are good for nothing. Even if you have done hundreds of hours of hard work, even if you spend a whole lot of money, it's not. So it is tested in order to get a customer experience as well. And third is contribution of the idea. Now, why, when you present your product to the external world, you get a lot of fresh ideas. Probably if I make a product, for example, I make this pen, right? I make this pen and I think it's a very good pen, but when I present it in front of the external world, I'll get a lot of ideas. Probably this pen need to be modified in this way. Your pen's thickness is not right. Probably it has to color need to change, etc., etc. And these all contribute to the betterment of your product and prototype. And it is always a duty of a startup founder to encourage the feedback, please encourage. I like, Eilish, what if? Okay, sir, what if I give it to you? Would you like it? How do you think, shall I improve it? I would like to present it to you. I would like to improve it to you. Can you help me to do this? And I'm sure 90% of the people will give you some idea or other. You have to note down all the ideas and start working on this, because those are the first-hand experience you are getting for your product before you go for a mass production. Once you get into the mass production, the scope of improvement gets lessened, because you spend a lot of time, you spend a lot of resources, you spend a lot of raw material and money. Right. So let test participant contribute the ideas. Next is, yes, this is important, testing with the right people. If you are testing with the wrong people and you start working on the wrong feedback, you are spoiled. Absolutely, you are spoiled. Testing won't give you any valuable insight, please. So it is always said, you please do a presentation of prototype who use it on a daily basis, or quite often, or you present in front of the experts in the field who are experts in the field, right? So if I am making say a surgical gloves for the surgeons, I can present it to the surgeons and take a feedback, right? I cannot present it to anyone else. I cannot present it to a software engineer, because he don't know how a surgical gloves looks like. He doesn't know how the surgical gloves should fit. What are the merits and demerits? Whether it should be powder free, it should not be. It should be with powder. Whatever is this. So it is always recommended to present this and get ideas from the people who use it, or who are the veterans of the field, right? The experts in that field. Next is be neutral while presenting your idea. Now, this is a mistake which most of the startup founders do. They start selling their ideas. Okay, this is the pen I have made. This is an excellent pen. This is cheap. This is absolutely, this can go on. This won't give you any trouble. No, no, no. You are not selling it. You haven't gone into the sales and marketing phase yet. You are just in a prototype phase. Don't sell your idea. Do not sell your idea. This is not the stage of selling. Prototype is the finding out the ways how you can improve it, and prototype is to present your product to the external world. That's it, and get the feedback out of it and get the goal. Goal of prototype is not to earn money. Goal of prototype is not to sell a product. Goal of prototype is not to market a product. Goal of prototype is to present a product, remember. So you have to be neutral. This is the feature of the product, and that's all. You stop it. Let the experts put their views. You write down those views, right? So that is one thing. This is the mistake which I have seen many startup founders start doing it, and ultimately they land up, they say we failed, our business is not picking up, people are not interested in our products, these all things. This generally happens because they do mistake while presenting their ideas, while presenting the prototype. Okay, next is open-mindedness. Yes, I always insist that you have to have an open mind. You have to have a very open mind. When the test participants provide negative feedback, there are many people say your product is not good, I'm not liking it. Now, this is again another mistake which startup founder do. They get aggressive. Sir, why it is not? It's so good. Do you think this pen as compared to your pen, my pen is much better? No, please don't defend your products. Please take the feedback. You have to understand negative feedback is a gold mine in business. If you are doing a business and you are getting a negative feedback, nothing good than that. Write down the negative feedback and start working on it. Do a lot of R&D. You make your prototype once again, but never ever question for a negative feedback. Never ever. When an expert gives negative feedback, please accept it. That is one of the rules, one of the foremost rule of prototype. You have to ask clarifying questions, of course, because if someone says your pen is not good, you have to actually ask in a very polite and diplomatic way why your pen is not good, whether it is priced not in a proper way, whether it's the color is not proper, whether the grip of the pen is not good, whether the tip of the pen is not good, whether it is not writing it properly. So you find out what exactly, ask relevant questions. So this is what. Next is communicate limitations. Now, when you are presenting the prototype, you have, as I said, you cannot put all your features at a time. You cannot do that. That's not going, no one can do that. So if you have got any limitation, please communicate that limitation. It is quite common, nothing to get shy, nothing to get depressed. Communicate that limitation. Make sure that test participant know your limitation before they test your product. Right? You give a presentation before they start taking this pen. If I'm presenting this pen, before they take this pen, start writing it, you should communicate the limitation. Probably as of now, this is only available in green color. We are also trying to make it in few more color. The color one, red, blue, yellow, orange, whatever is this. So this is what. So please communicate the limitation. So if you have a limitation, you are communicating it, that opens avenues of business or avenues of improvement in the later stage. So please communicate the limitation. Next is should be put in action. Now, this is another vital phase. Why I said you get a lot of feedback, you get a lot of yes, no, very good, whatever. Now what? You have to put all those things which you have collected while presenting your prototype into action. You have to improve your product. You have to remove the errors from your products. That's how you have to go on. The circle goes on. Like next comes prototype validation. Now, prototype validation, again, there are a lot of rules of prototype validation, but if I start saying the rules, probably I'll take more than a day. But here I'm not discussing any rules because rules will complicate the process and it will, again, your mind and your thoughts will become very, very complicated. Many people will run away. Okay, it's a very difficult thing. It can't happen. Mere se nahi hoga. It cannot happen. I can't do that and all these things. So I have mentioned the validation process in the most layman's term. So people who are not from a business management background, who are not doing business, they too can understand that. Right. So I'm putting it in a very simple way. I'm trying to be it in a most simple way. Now, to get the design solution faster through hypothesis testing, it is about the creating ideas as possible when the testing goes. Now, I have already been saying it, but things which you can see is always better than hypothesis. You can write a big hypothesis, pages after pages, but something which is of audio-visual manner, if, for example, what I can see, touch and feel, that thing is always better, right? So that's how we get into this process. Validation comes when, the first thing first, what the validation, the first criteria of validation is whether it solves a problem. What is the motto of business? I have already discussed the motto of business is solving a problem, getting into some new products, and third is enhancing the efficiency of an existing system, right? Now, you have to figure out, probably you have figured out it can solve a problem, but it is the experts to figure out, the people who are really into that thing to figure out whether it really solves a problem. Whether it solves a problem, the evaluation is done. Absolutely is done. It's a valid prototype, right? So first thing first is how it solves a problem. If you haven't figured out the problem or you know how to get figured out, but not exactly drawn the exact diagram of it. So this is absolutely okay. Even if you haven't drawn the diagram of it, but you know how to solve it, you give a digital prototype instead of a real prototype, that is absolutely fine. But if it solves a problem, it's valid. If it doesn't solve the problem in a proper way, in a mass way, in a cost-effective way, it requires one more validation, one more session of workout. Right. Now, traditional things, because in ancient days when the prototype, I must not say it's ancient days, probably 30, 40, 50 years back, this prototype validation was done in form of surveys, in form of diagrams, in form of interviewing a focus group. They used to make around 10, 50, 20 focus group, and they used to, okay, if I give you this product, will your life get improved? Yes or no? If they say yes, it's taken as done. Again, there are different focus group surveys, landing page surveys. These are some age-old methods of validating a business idea. But once the prototype came into existence, this is done through interface, right? It's done through interface. Directly that product is taken to the problematic area and the problem is tested whether this is solved or not solved, or is it partially solved. So that's the best way of validating a business idea. If it solves, it stands validated. If it doesn't solve, you need a rework. If it partially solved, you have to work on the efficiency of the prototype. Now, prototype is validation is a very critical part, but you know why it is critical part? Because your implementation process cannot be 100% successful if prototype is not validated. Your validation of prototype is very, very important in this. Now, let's see how it is generally done. Explanatory research. Now, this is your research. It's not a research of the society. This is the research of the startup founder. You have to know, first point, for whom you are building this prototype or product or a service module. If your prototype solves a community problem, you have to pinpoint the community who can use it. If you are solving a waterlogging problem, probably the places which receive a heavy rainfall can be the area. If you take it to Rajasthan, it is of no use because there is hardly any rain over there, right? If you take it to hilly areas, it's hardly of any use because in hilly areas, waterlogging process is not that huge, right? So you have to pinpoint those areas where your prototype is going to work, or thinking about those community or places using thinking which you have made your prototype, right? And build your product to solve those problems. Now, if you consider Mumbai, right? If you consider Mumbai, in every monsoon season, there is a flood, right? So if you make a prototype and present it, this, if you do your, water channeling this way, the flood can be prevented. It's there. But again, you have to pinpoint the areas where it has to be tested. You have to pinpoint where it can be implemented. If you take this module to say Himachal, it is not going to work. If you take this to Uttarakhand, it is not going to work. If you take this to Darjeeling or Ooty, that module is not going to work. So this exploratory research has to be there, and you have to take that research data and present your product as a solution of that persisting problem. I repeat, you have to get data, you have to do a research, you have to pinpoint your area, you have to pinpoint your target, and you have to use your product to give the solution of the persisting problem in those areas, right? Now, should have a set of hypotheses. Now, I generally move out of hypothesis. I'm not a very hypothetical guy or something. I'm more interested in getting a practical prototype. Whenever I go for a prototype validation, or at times when I give a prototype, I always prefer I give a proper prototype, a practical, functional prototype. Now, however, still, even if you make a functional prototype, it has to match with a minimal hypothesis, minimum rules, minimum, the law and order, or whatever you take it as. It has to be backed by hypothesis. You create a water filter plant probably, but how the filtering of water is done, what is the chemical process involved, what is the physical process involved, what are the components involved, these has to be well drawn in a hypothesis. Along with the hypothesis, you have to present your prototype. If hypothesis works well, if your practical functional product works well, more or less your prototype is validated. Okay, the first time was your research, pinpointing target, providing solution, over. Second is hypothesis and the product. Why I say hypothesis is that you cannot, I have given the example of a water filter. You cannot use any component which is banned. You cannot you cannot add any kind of chemical which is banned. You cannot put any component which is not required, which is hazardous for health. So it has to be backed by a hypothesis, proper theoretical hypothesis, proper theoretical validated hypothesis. Next is test behavior, not opinion. Now, this is a tricky ground. Why I say it's a tricky ground? Because at times what happens, if the people are very known to us, they will refrain from giving a negative feedback. For example, if I present this pen to one of my people, okay, I have met this pen. What is your opinion on this? If the person is my friend, he will not give a bad feedback. Even if the product is not good, he will say, yes, I will use it, but probably he will never use it. So here you have to do a behavior analysis, not an opinion analysis. There is no hard and fast rule for this. You're cautious, your decision making ability and your your identification ability can really get through this. So these are all some tricky things which you need to keep it in mind while validating, and how it is validated, and of course how the opinion matters. Next approach is lean approach. Believe me, I find this the best approach. This is the best approach I find. This is my favorite approach, the lean. This is very interesting. How many of you have read the book called The Lean Startup? That's my favorite book. I recommend this to everyone. The Lean Startup. And there is another book called $100 Startup. These two books advocate that how your micro business, how your small business can take you to heights. Lean startup is this. You do not have a fat startup. You're not a fat boy startup. Your lean startup can really take you to zenith, take you to sky. There is no limit. It is written by Eric Ries. I suggest please buy this book and read it. Right. Lean startup says if market accepts it, market buys it, your business is done. Absolutely, your business is done. You don't need anything else. So that gives 4-stage approach. 4-stage approach is this product market fit approach. If your product fits into market, your prototype is validated. Absolutely done. Nothing more. No theory, no validation, nothing. Whatever you make, people are ready to buy it. Market is ready to distribute it, and you are done. Absolutely done. Done means you are done. You can simply sit back at your house and earn money. So it has got 4 stages. Remember 4 stages. First is validating the problem. Now there are 2 types of problem. Number 1, which is worth solving. Second, which doesn't worth solving. Right. I repeat, one thing is worth solving. Second is not worth solving. So you have to first pinpoint the problem. You have to pick the problem which is worth solving. If you are taking a problem which doesn't worth solving, it's an invalid prototype model. Absolutely. So if the users think the solution which you are giving is not required, I'm happy with that problem. Right. I'm happy with that problem. So people won't buy that. First, you have to pinpoint the problem, before validating the prototype, you have to validate the problem, right? Whether the problem is worth solving. There are certain, because you cannot solve every problem of the world. You cannot solve. Certain problem has to be left as problem, right? But there are certain problems which need to be solved. I give you an example. In Kolkata, there is a big umbrella manufacturer called Mohendra Lal Datta. It's almost more than 150-year-old company. Mohendra Lal's great grandson is now taking over the business. So in pandemic, they have got the finest stitching technology. They can stitch anything. They have the finest stitching technology, right? So they have a lot of stuff for umbrella, but at the pandemic last year, when the pandemic was there and the doctors didn't have any PPE kit, that is personal protection equipment kit, this company has diverted from making umbrella to making PPE kit. It's the same technology, it's just stitching in a particular way, only the material changed, right? And the company made one of the finest PPE kit and supplied to entire India, and he was awarded, and they were really awarded by the President of India quite recently. Now, What was the problem? Was the umbrella was the problem? Because was the sun a problem during those days? Was rain a problem during those days? No. COVID-19, the coronavirus was the problem. So coronavirus was the problem worth solving, not the sun or rain at that point of time. So he has, with the same technology, he left one problem and picked up the second problem. So that is the thing. So you have to pinpoint and pick the right problem. This is number one. Number two is validate the market. Some users might agree that this is a problem worth solving. There are certain problems which should be solved. There are certain problems should not be solved. Right, as I've already said, you have to pinpoint the problem. But even if you pick up a problem, right, you pick up a problem, but in the market, there are 1,000 solutions to that problem. I repeat, you pick up the right problem which need to be solved, but there are already 1,000 solutions of that problem available in the market. Now, the question comes, will the market pick up your solution? Maybe yes, maybe no. So this is the second point you have to ask yourself before making your prototype, and while validating the prototype. You can have a lot of things, lot of problems are there, a lot of solutions are also available, right? But you have to pinpoint whether your solution to that particular problem will be accepted by the market or not. Third is validate the product. Problem might exist, but doesn't the product actually solve it? Most of the time, product doesn't solve the problem fully. It can reduce the quantum of the problem, the percentage of the problem, the influence of the problem, but does not fully solve it. So that's the third point you have to keep in mind, validate the product. And the last, I like this point very much, believe me, validate the willingness to pay. You have a fantastic product, people are willing and to take it, market is flooded, the market really wants that product, but no one wants to buy it, no one wants to pay for it, right? So there are many things which comes for free. If you start making a business out of that, it will not survive. The prototype will stand as invalid. So first thing first, the last thing is very important. You have pinpointed the problem, you have validated the market, your product really solves the problem, but no one is willing to pay for it. Now, where do you stand? If no one is willing to pay for it, there is no sale. If there is no sale, there is no profit, no earning. So where you keep manufacturing the products, but there is no buyer. No one is ready to pay for it. What will you do? So these are the lean approach. This is called the product market fit approach. This was well explained by Eric Rice in his book, The Lean Startup. This is one of my favorite books. Now, he bluntly says, I too bluntly say, if an idea means all four criteria, which I've mentioned just now, you are free to move into product development. Your prototype stands validated. Done, you are done, absolutely. But it might sound as very easy, it's a 4-step process, but it is very tough because each problem, each points which I have mentioned has got a lot of embedded points. You have to put 2 and 2 and read between the lines in order to get. You need a lot of brainstorming. You have to spend a lot of sleepless nights to get into these 4 concepts. But if you will get through, you are the lucky one. Probably I'll tell you 1% of people can actually get into these 4 steps. Only 1%, 1 out of 100. That's it. But if you are the lucky one, you are the one. It's up to you. Start working on this. Now, you make a prototype. Now, where to present it? There's a very valid question which comes. You have made a prototype. Where? It's there in my house. But even it is there in my house, does that really mean anything? Answer is no. It's there in my table. It's there in my drawing room. It's there in my living room. It's there in my bedroom. How does that matter? It doesn't matter. You have to present it. You have to present it in the right forum. Now, there are many prototype challenges come up. There are many prototype challenges come where the people invite startups to solve a particular problem. When the pandemic was there, India ran out of PPE kit, ran out of 3-ply mask, N95 mask. The Indian government or all the state government has invited all startups. Okay, see, we are in this situation, you help us. And you won't believe, within 30 days, startup did a commendable job. All their prototypes, most of the prototypes which are presented to the government, presented to the different authorities, were approved. Most of the prototypes were approved and production started, and immediately within few weeks the market was flooded with the Indian products. So the import of this, the market was so full, the India started exporting those. So that's what I have said, that before you go for prototype, you should always register your company, because once you registered your companies, you get a face and you can participate in various prototype concepts. I suggest one more thing. Please register yourself as a startup in DIPP site. I think it's quite easy. You can do it yourself. Just go to DIPP in the government site, or you go to startupindia.gov.in and you register yourself. It's a very basic questions, 5-6 basic questions are asked, and they will ask you to present your business module, and probably another 48 hours you will give a startup certificate. It will have a DIPP registration number. Once you have a DIPP registration number, you can participate in lot of prototype competitions. They come in form of challenges. Competition is a wrong word I'm expressing, but they come in form of challenges. So there are a lot of challenges. Startup India, if you go to the Startup India site, there are IT challenges, technological challenges, even the Swachh Bharat. If any of you are working with the sanitization and all those things stuff, cleanliness and all this stuff, you can very well go to the Swachh Bharat site and participate in many prototypes. You can present your prototype. Atmanirbhar Bharat challenges are a lot of there. COVID-19 challenges are there. Hackathon is there. Hackathon is mostly related to IT related challenge. If anyone is working with any IT related startup, I know a startup who work with basically for the IT challenges. If someone is having the IT information technology, they can go for a hackathon contest. These challenges ask for various prototypes. This is the right forum where you get a lot of experienced veterans who can really evaluate your prototype. Even if your prototype fails, you will get a constructive inputs you will get from them. So please go ahead and step by step manner, you first get your company registered and get your startup certificate, and then you go for all this. Startup India is there, Stand Up India is there, a lot of state government competitions are there, because now instead of asking for a prior to that, around few years back, the government used to make a committee to solve the problem. Now the things have changed. Now the situation has changed. Now government asked for the suggestion and prototype from the startups, because at times some of the finest idea come from them. They can not only approve your startup or your prototype to a huge level implementation, but you will get a lot of monetary benefits also, a lot of funding benefits also. Right. I'll give you an example of this. In Startup India side, there is a grand water savings challenge. Develop a smarter Indian toilet and help India save water. So if any of you are working with sanitation or water related any startup or toilet related startup, can very well participate in this. So you can present your prototype to them. I think there is a last date is in this month, so you can very well go for it. So there are a lot of such prototype competition where you can present your prototype, but always remember there are high chances of failure. Don't get disheartened with a failure. Just keep applying those. Now, next is prototype conversion. Now, prototype validation competition we have seen. Now, the prototype conversion. Now, your goal for prototype has to be proper. First and foremost, why are you raising your prototype? First is, there could be different reasons. I can make a prototype for a different reason. You can make a prototype for a different reason. But why you are making a prototype, that goal should be absolutely clear in your mind. Number one is whether you are making it for fundraising, whether you are making it for patent application, whether you want to sell the concept, or whether you want to license your product for a mass production to someone else. Or if you want to rectify the errors, or you want to finalize the design. But once you finalize the design, once you rectify the design, so once you have finalized your prototype, then you have to simply go to the next step of startup in order to make your startup, in order to convert your product into startup. Right? Now, design mockup is, this is an interesting concept. Prototype conversion is the design simple mockup. Now, what is this? You may have, whether your product is digital or physical, start off by creating a quick sample of what the product actually looks like. Right. Once your prototype is finalized, make a quick sample what your final products look like, and you simply go for a mock-up or a teaser campaign, or you can directly get into the market. Second point is, this technique was very much usable, was worked well for Erika Joy Dune. You know who is Erika Joy Dune? Erika Joy Dune is the founder of Wellness Mercantile. That is a digital magazine. That's one of the very high rated digital magazine. Next is create a small scale version of your offering. Now, I always insist, in fact, in the lean startup or $100 startup authors, these are some very good books on startup. They always say that you should always get mini version instead going for a huge version. Mini version of your event, program, or community that gives your audience to an opportunity to get know you better. For example, if you are presenting a smaller version of your product, your audience will know you better. That's why, and how your people will interact with you, because with the small version, you will get a lot of interaction with your client, and more you interact with your client, more you get the better version of your products. Next is hackathon. I have already talked about hackathon. Hackathon is mostly, for the IT related startups. And with this IT related startups, you can have a lot of show of your IT skills, IT conversion skills, artificial business related skills like. Now, landing page. Now, what is a landing page? Landing page is after getting a teaser of your prototype, how should a person get in touch with you or know about your products more? This can be done digitally by creating a website, or by simply by creating a Facebook page, or even probably a phone call or an email is good enough to start with. So you have to make a landing. So you made a product, you have made the different section, mini budgets you have paid, mini modules you have created. If you are an IT guy, you have participated, you have gone into hackathon, and after what you have to create a landing page where the interested people will land and seek information and buy products. So this is the landing page. Low production beta. Now, I always say that initially you don't put a huge fund into something, because you always need to refine your production process, your products, your service modules, everything. So always concentrate on low production beta in a very low budget, but high value experience. Remember, experience to the client has to be very good. If it is not good, your product will be rejected. So low production beta. Now, if I may ask why you are actually making a prototype, the only option of making a prototype, only motive of making a prototype is to move across the next levels of startup, next stages of startup. Number one is definitely fundraising. Now, fundraising, most of the time people present a prototype so that they can get the fund for manufacturing, setting up the manufacturing process, or setting up the high scale service module. So here some of the things you need to keep it in mind. Why you require fund, how much fund you require, how will you return the fund, and through what mode you will get the fund, from banks, from NBFC, from venture capital, from angel investors, how. After you get the product funding, you have to straight away go for the production phase. But before production phase, there is always you are expected to start a testing phase. Now, testing phase, you have to test the many parameters, legal, whether you have got all the legal document to start the production, whether you have got technical know-how, cost calculation need to be there, specification of the product has to be proper, process has to be checked, your raw material supply, distribution supply, whether there is any error or not, these all things need to be checked. Now, after the testing phase, if you are 100% sure the things are in, you have to straight away go for a production phase. Now, once you get into the production phase, you have to inculcate the factors production resources, man, machine, materials, and energy. Definitely, these are the processes you have to inculcate and organize in order to start the production. Further, during production, you have to do quality check, efficiency check, productivity check, your safety and security check has to be there, raw material availability has to be there, you have to prevent breakdown. There are a lot of interruptions at time, maybe because of union, maybe because of some external circumstances, so you have to keep all those under check. Post-production phase, once the production is there, you have to do a quality check of your product. Once again, your packing has to be absolutely perfect. Your storage has to be there. You need to have a right inventory control. Of course, you need distribution and logistics so that your product reaches your market and of course ready for sale. Now, next phase is a very big phase and very important phase is sales and marketing. Unless the product is sold and people doesn't pay you money, nothing moves on. You have to sell. Change of ownership has to be there, or you have to avail the services in lieu of monetary expense. You can give a product free to a customer, but that is not sale. Sale has to be against a monetary exchange. Now, once you start getting profit and you have to diversify, you have to grow as well. You cannot keep just, you cannot sit on a pile of money. You have to rotate your money so that your production increases. Probably you have to add another vertical to your startup. And probably if you are producing 1,000 units per month, probably you have to look for 5,000 units a month. So these all are the growth and diversification process which you need to protect and there. Break even and profitability is definitely there. Break even is, you know better than me, when the cost, when the revenue increases the cost, this is the time when you have to if it doesn't happen, if it is taking too long, then of course you have to go for a restructuring of the cost and sale equation. And of course, profitability, diversification, we have already talked about. Now, profitability, I want to put one more word, that in profitability, it's not just earning profit. Analyzing a profit is quite important. Analyzing gross profit, operating profit, net profit, types of profit, analyzing profit margin, whether profit margin is high or a profit margin is low. All these things you have to keep analyzing. Now, I have already talked. Prototype phase is very challenging phase because it's in the very initial phases of startup. You have got low monetary resources, you have got limited manpower. Most of the time, it's only the founder or only the founding team who does. There are always high chances of error. There is no or less pre-presentation error evaluation. It's not possible actually. Efficiency check of the product is not there. Technical checks are not possible. These are just few of the challenges what the prototype face. Their challenges could be humongous. Humongous means humongous. So with this, I end my case.